Most romanticize Victorian courtship through rose-tinted lenses, imagining stolen glances across candlelit ballrooms, passionate handwritten love notes, and gentlemen kneeling with top hats in hand to propose. The reality couldn't be more different. For average Victorians, the dating scene was a minefield of bizarre social codes, painfully awkward encounters, and invisible tripwires that could destroy one's entire future overnight. Finding true love wasn't the goal. The real challenge was avoiding accidental engagement to some stranger just because you mishandled a handkerchief wrong. So if these scandalous truths intrigue you, hit subscribe. By the way, what's the time in your corner of the world? Drop it in the comments. Last week, a Canadian viewer mentioned listening during lunch breaks. No judgment, just unexpected. We're time traveling to Victorian England shortly, but first, get comfy. Seriously, adjust your position now, because once we begin, you won't want to move. Ready? Your eyes flutter open in 1875 London. The first sensation hits like a ton of bricks, literally. Something heavy presses against your ribs, squeezing your waist like a python slowly crushing its prey. Shallow breaths are all you can manage as realization dawns. You're laced into a corset. Not just any corset, but one tightened to the point where you can feel your internal organs rearranging themselves to accommodate the compression. And someone's still pulling the strings tighter. Miss Elenina, do hold still. Comes the voice of Agnes, your lady's maid, currently engaged in what can only be called socially sanctioned torture in the name of beauty. We must have you looking perfect today. You're 21 years old, enduring your third London season, and facing spinsterhood if you don't secure a husband soon. Unlike your comfortable 2025 bed, you're perched on a wooden dressing chair, gripping its edges while Agnes performs this daily ritual of rib-crushing fashion. Your mother insists you look absolutely flawless today. Agnes continues, delivering another brutal tug to the laces. Lady Harrington's tea is crucially important. I hear Mr. Blackwood will be attending. You suppress a groan. Mr. Blackwood, the latest suitable match in your mother's endless parade of potential husbands. Wealthy, well-connected, and about as exciting as watching paint dry. But his eligibility trumps personality every time in Victorian matchmaking. I've spent what some might call an unhealthy amount of time researching Victorian courtship rituals. Let me tell you, while modern dating apps might be chaotic, they're nothing compared to the brutal marriage market of the 1800s. I'm not exaggerating when I say Victorian courtship was essentially a high-stakes chess game, where one wrong move could ruin your entire life. Agnes, you whisper, must the corset be this suffocating? I could barely breathe at Lady Pembroke's ball last week. Without easing her relentless pulling, Agnes replies, your mother says gentlemen don't want wives who eat more than sparrows. Now let's get you into your dress. The dress, a pale blue morning gown with enough fabric to clothe an entire village. The crinoline cage beneath transforms the skirt into a perfect bell shape. Elegant to behold, but wearing it feels like being imprisoned. Sitting properly becomes impossible, quick movements unthinkable, and even using the bathroom requires a military operation. Not that any proper Victorian lady would ever admit to having bodily functions. In Victorian times, marriage wasn't about love, it was survival. For women especially, matrimony was essentially their career path. A bad match meant lifelong misery with no escape. Divorce was nearly impossible, scandalous, and typically left women destitute. The stakes couldn't be higher. Your mother's been awake since dawn, Agnes mentions while arranging your hair. She's determined to see you engaged before season's end. What she doesn't say aloud is even clearer. Your younger sister Jane awaits her societal debut, and having two unmarried daughters making the rounds would be both financially draining and socially embarrassing. You're occupying precious real estate in the marriage market. Time to move the inventory. Picture this. The Victorian marriage market, literally called the season, ran from April to August when Parliament convened. Aristocratic and upper-middle-class families would abandon their country estates for London's months-long series of strategically planned social events designed for one purpose: throwing young men and women together in carefully monitored environments to facilitate suitable matches. Miss Elenina, Your mother wants to review your dance card before we leave, Agnes says, securing the final hairpin. The dance card, a tiny booklet tied to your wrist where gentlemen would pencil in which dances they'd claimed. A full card meant popularity. An empty one signaled abject failure. Dating is public performance with immediate visible judgment. What fun. Agnes, you venture. What if? What if I don't want to marry Mr. Blackwood or any of Mother's choices? Agnes looks at you as if you've suggested swimming to America. Miss Elenina, she says quietly, what choice do you have? And therein lies the rub. In Victorian England, especially for women, choice wasn't part of the equation. The goal was marriage, preferably advantageous, with society's entire structure designed to make it happen. Now let's discuss the coming out process. Nothing to do with sexuality. This was about announcing, hello world, I'm officially available on the marriage market. For upper-class girls, this meant being presented at court, literally curtsying before the queen to receive society's stamp of approval. This one's ready for breeding. Less prestigious families announced daughters' availability through local balls and dinner parties. Your debut was 3 years ago. You remember standing in a line of nervous girls in white dresses with feathers in their hair, waiting to curtsy before Queen Victoria herself. One girl actually fainted, and no one helped until after her presentation was complete. Priorities. There, Agnes says, stepping back to admire her handiwork. You look beautiful, Miss Elenina. You examine your reflection, beautiful by Victorian standards, pale skin, achieved by avoiding sunlight, and sometimes with lead-based powder, wasp-waist corsetry, elaborately styled hair. You're the perfect product, packaged and ready for market. Downstairs, your mother waits in the drawing room, already dressed for social calls. She assesses you with the critical eye of a livestock judge at a county fair. Elenina, dear, turn around. You complete a slow rotation, earning her approving nod. The blue enhances your eyes. Mr. Blackwood mentioned favoring blue. Of course he did. And of course she remembered. Your mother collects intelligence on eligible bachelors like a spy building dossiers. Mother, you begin carefully. I was thinking perhaps I might visit the library today instead. Don't be absurd. She cuts you off. Lady Harrington specifically arranged for several eligible gentlemen to attend. It would be terribly rude to decline. Translation: get in the carriage. We're going husband hunting. The carriage ride to Lady Harrington's is uncomfortable both from the corset and your mother's lecture on proper tea etiquette. Don't speak unless addressed. Don't laugh too loudly. Don't eat too much. Don't drink excessive tea. Don't sit too close to gentlemen. But don't appear aloof either. It's like navigating a labyrinth blindfolded. And remember, your mother says as you arrive at the impressive townhouse, Mr. Blackwood stands to inherit considerable wealth. His family owns properties in both Kent and Yorkshire. You nod dutifully. Properties in Kent and Yorkshire. How thrilling. How romantic. A footman helps you alight as you follow your mother up the steps. Inside, the drawing room buzzes with activity. Mostly women in elegant dresses with a strategic sprinkling of eligible bachelors. The men look as uncomfortable as the women appear determined. It's a battlefield disguised as a tea party. Mrs. Pembroke. Miss Pembroke. How delightful. Lady Harrington swoops down, air-kissing your mother while scrutinizing you with hawk-like intensity. Elenina, dear, you look positively radiant. Come, there are several people you simply must meet. And so the parade begins. You're displayed like prized livestock, introduced to a blur of side-whiskered gentlemen, making identical small talk about weather, the season, and recent theater performances, careful to appear intelligent enough to avoid dullness, but not so clever as to intimidate. Miss Pembroke, a deep voice interrupts your thoughts, and you turn to see a tall man with impressively bushy sideburns bowing slightly. I believe we met at Lady Westmoreland's ball last month. Henry Blackwood at your service. So this is the infamous Mr. Blackwood. You curtsy in response, noting he's more attractive than your mother led you to believe. Not that it matters when personality could still be as dry as yesterday's toast. Mr. Blackwood, you reply, how lovely to see you again. I trust you're enjoying the season thus far, he asks, launching the predictable script of polite conversation. Here's the brutal truth about Victorian dating. Getting to know someone before marriage was nearly impossible. Every interaction was monitored, every topic pre-approved. Even letters could be inspected by parents. You were expected to choose a life partner based on weather small talk and quadrille dancing skills. Would you care to take a turn about the room? Mr. Blackwood offers his arm in textbook perfect fashion. You place your hand lightly on his sleeve, maintaining exact distance, close enough for conversation, far enough to prevent scandal. Across the room, your mother watches like a hawk, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. "I understand you enjoy reading, Miss Pembroke," Mr. Blackwood says as you stroll. "Might I ask which authors you prefer?" This is a trap. Mention something too intellectual and risk being labeled a blue stocking. Educated women were considered unmarriageable. Choose something too frivolous and seem empty-headed. You aim for safe middle ground. "I enjoy Jane Austen," you reply, truthful and acceptable, "and some poetry." "Excellent taste," he nods approvingly. "I'm partial to Sir Walter Scott and Wordsworth myself." Thus begins the delicate dance of assessing compatibility through the most constrained conversation imaginable, like judging someone's entire personality by watching them select fruit at the market. Good luck with that. "Might I request the honor of calling on you tomorrow afternoon?" Mr. Blackwood asks as you complete your circuit. This is significant. A gentleman calling at your home, still chaperoned, of course, indicates serious interest. Your mother will be ecstatic. "I would be delighted," you respond automatically. What else can you say? The rest of the tea passes in a blur of cucumber sandwiches, lukewarm tea, and stilted conversation. By the time you return home, your face aches from maintained pleasantries, and your ribs scream for corset relief. Mr. Blackwood was quite attentive. Your mother gloats, practically glowing. And he's requested to call tomorrow. "I knew the blue dress was perfect." "Yes, mother," you mutter. Clearly the dress secured his interest, not my substantial dowry or our family connections. "He seems pleasant." You offer the most enthusiastic honesty you can muster. "Pleasant. He's perfect. Excellent family, substantial means, and under 30. You couldn't ask for better. You couldn't ask for much of anything in Victorian courtship. That was rather the point. Here's what made Victorian courtship truly wild. The rules were so rigid that people developed elaborate secret codes just to communicate basic feelings. You couldn't say, "I like you," or "you bore me." So entire silent languages emerged, fan movements, glove placements, calling card rituals, all to convey what society forbade you from speaking aloud. As Agnes helps you undress that evening, you whisper, "Agnes, what if I trip into a rosebush tomorrow?" Mother would never recover. Agnes stifles a laugh. "Just remember proper distance from Mr. Blackwood. And for heaven's sake, keep your gloves on." Ah, gloves. In Victorian England, bare hands were practically scandalous. The fabric barrier between skin and world was just another way to maintain proper distance from suitors. Your walking dress requires slightly less corsetry than formal wear, but still involves enough fabric to upholster furniture. Agnes slips something into your handbag, your ivory fan with painted birds. "Remember our lessons," Agnes murmurs. The fan speaks when your lips cannot. She'd taught you the secret fan language passed between ladies' maids, a covert communication system developed by women with no other way to express true feelings publicly. Drawing it across your cheek means. Agnes quizzes, "I love you," twirling in your right hand. "I wish to be rid of you." Resting on right cheek? Yes. Left cheek? No. Agnes nods approvingly. Good. Use it wisely. The absurdity almost makes you laugh. Grown adults resorting to fan semaphore just to say yes or no. But that was Victorian dating. Indirect communication, hidden meanings, and plausible deniability. When Mr. Blackwood arrives precisely at 2, you descend the stairs with practiced grace. He stands in the foyer, top hat in hand, every inch the proper gentleman. "Mrs. Pembroke, Miss Pembroke," he bows. "I've brought my carriage. Shall we?" The ride to the botanical gardens is painfully silent, your mother wedged between you like a human chastity belt. Upon arrival, Mr. Blackwood helps each of you down with gloved hand-only contact. The gardens are breathtaking, exotic plants from across the British Empire. As you stroll gravel paths, your mother deliberately slows, allowing you and Mr. Blackwood to walk slightly ahead, still in sight, but with illusion of privacy. "You look particularly lovely today, Miss Pembroke," Mr. Blackwood begins. "Thank you, sir," you reply, eyes properly downcast. "Might I ask, do you enjoy music?" "I'm quite fond of the pianoforte." A probing question about shared interests, the Victorian equivalent of "what's your favorite Netflix show?" "I do enjoy music," you reply, "though I play only tolerably." "I should very much like to hear you play sometime," he says with unexpected warmth. Is he genuinely interested or just following script? The thick veil of propriety makes it impossible to tell. This is when the fan enters the equation. You open it and fan yourself slowly, which secretly means "I am married," clearly false. You're curious if he knows the code. His eyes flick to the fan, then back to your face, a slight frown creasing his brow. So he does recognize the signals. Interesting. You switch tactics, closing the fan and drawing it across your cheek. "I love you." His eyebrows shoot up. "Miss Pembroke, are you feeling quite well? Perhaps the sun is too strong." Suppressing a smile, you switch signals again, fan resting on left cheek. "No." Now he looks thoroughly confused. "Perhaps we should find shade," he suggests, clearly trying to decipher your contradictory messages. Here's the catch with fan language. It was never standardized. Different etiquette books assign different meanings to the same gestures. What meant "I love you" in one guide might mean "leave me alone" in another. A communication system designed for miscommunication. Inside the orchid house's humid glass walls, exotic blooms explode in vibrant colors. The real attraction comes when your mother becomes distracted by an unusual specimen, leaving you momentarily alone with Mr. Blackwood behind a towering palm. "Miss Pembroke," he says quietly, "I confess I'm having difficulty interpreting your signals." So he does know the fan language. Heat rises to your cheeks. "I was merely cooling myself." You lie, snapping the fan shut. "Of course," he nods, though a twinkle in his eye suggests he's not fooled. "Though if I may be bold, if you wish to communicate with me, perhaps words would prove clearer than other methods." Is he teasing you? That seems impossibly forward for a Victorian gentleman. But before you can respond, your mother reappears, shattering the moment. The fan wasn't the only covert communication system in Victorian courtship. Flowers carried secret meanings too. Red roses for love, obviously. But did you know yellow carnations meant "you've disappointed me"? Or striped carnations signaled "I cannot be with you"? Exiting the orchid house, a flower seller catches your eye. She offers small bouquets tied with ribbons. On impulse, you pause. "Would you like one, miss?" Before you can answer, Mr. Blackwood steps forward. "Allow me," he says, purchasing a posy of daisies and forget-me-nots, presenting it with a slight bow. You accept with a curtsy, aware this simple exchange carries weight. A gentleman giving flowers marks a courtship milestone. These particular blooms, daisies for innocence, forget-me-nots for true love, convey their own message. Did Mr. Blackwood choose deliberately? Does he know the language of flowers as well as fans? Or was this simply the prettiest arrangement? How thoughtful, Mr. Blackwood. Your mother approves, watching the exchange like a hawk. Then there's the handkerchief, another innocent item loaded with meaning. You've tucked one in your sleeve, as every proper lady does. Accidentally, dropping it is a classic tactic to gain a gentleman's attention. As you walk, you let your handkerchief slip to the ground. "Miss Pembroke, you've dropped your handkerchief." Mr. Blackwood notices immediately, bending to retrieve it. Now comes the crucial test. How he returns it indicates his interest. Simply handing it back would show politeness without particular affection. Pressing it to his heart before returning would declare his feelings. Mr. Blackwood does neither. Instead, he tucks it into his coat pocket with a smile. "I believe it's customary for a gentleman to keep such tokens, with your permission, of course." Your mother looks ready to faint from joy. This is practically a public declaration of intent in Victorian terms. "Yes," you manage, face burning. "You may keep it." Congratulations! You've just participated in the Victorian equivalent of changing your Facebook status to in a relationship. I'm not inventing this. Victorians published actual guidebooks on handkerchief flirting. One 1867 journal detailed an entire handkerchief telegraph system. Drawing it across your lips meant, "I desire your acquaintance." Resting it on your left cheek meant no. Right cheek meant yes. The journal specified these signals should only be used at balls, parties, theaters, and on streets, never in church. Apparently, God drew the line at handkerchief flirtation. Returning home, you're exhausted, not from physical exertion, but from the mental gymnastics of navigating Victorian courtship rituals. Every gesture, word, and glance carries calculated meaning. Well, your mother demands as soon as Mr. Blackwood departs. What did you think of him? What can you say? That you spent the outing sending mixed fan signals just to test his comprehension? That you're still unsure whether he chose those flowers intentionally? That you're now -1 handkerchief, but no closer to understanding the man who might become your husband? He seems kind. You offer the most honest enthusiasm you can muster. Kind, she exclaims. He's perfect. Did you see how he kept your handkerchief? And those flowers. I wouldn't be surprised if he speaks to your father by week's end. Panic jolts through you. So soon? You've had exactly 2 proper conversations with the man. Mother, surely that's too quick. We barely know each other. She waves this away. Nonsense. Your father and I were engaged after 3 meetings. That's how proper society operates. The Victorian courtship timetable could alarm modern sensibilities. Without casual dating or extended getting-to-know-you periods, decisions happen rapidly based on minimal information. That evening, as Agnes prepares you for bed, she notices your troubled expression. Was the outing not to your liking, Miss Elenina? She asks while brushing your hair. Agnes, how can I possibly decide if Mr. Blackwood would make a good husband? I know nothing about him beyond his manners and piano preferences. Agnes sighs. That's why we have fan languages and flower codes. To glimpse someone's true nature when society forbids direct questions. But it's confusing, you protest. I tried fan signals today and just confused him. Agnes can't help laughing. The trouble with secret languages, Miss Elenina, is that not everyone reads the same dictionary. That night, lying in bed, you contemplate the day's events, the fan semaphore, floral messages, handkerchief exchange. All these elaborate workarounds developed because direct communication was forbidden. It's absurd. These hoops just to say I like you or go away. But then, doesn't modern dating have its own secret languages? The delayed text reply, the social media like without follow-up, the read receipt without response. Maybe we haven't evolved as far from Victorian times as we'd like to believe. The next morning brings a delivery. A small package containing an embroidered handkerchief with your initials and a note. To replace the one I claimed. Yours, HB. Your mother vibrates with excitement. A gift. And so personal. This is most promising. You examine the handkerchief. Lovely craftsmanship. Thoughtful gesture. But what does it actually reveal about Henry Blackwood as a person? Only that he has good manners and can afford nice linens. We must send a response immediately, your mother declares. A thank you note, appreciative but not overly eager. Even gratitude must be carefully measured in Victorian courtship. And, she continues, eyes gleaming, we should invite Mr. Blackwood to dinner next week. Nothing formal, just family. Another step in the prescribed courtship dance. Your younger sister Jane bursts into your room, eyes sparkling. Elenina, is it true? Did Mr. Blackwood send you a handkerchief? She demands, flopping onto your bed with unladylike enthusiasm. You show her the delicate square. How romantic, she sighs. Do you think he'll propose soon? Jane, I've barely spoken to him. We've met 3 times total. She shrugs. That's plenty. Emily Harrington got engaged after 2 meetings, and they're blissfully happy. They say, you mutter. Who knows what happens behind closed doors once the courtship performance ends and real marriage begins? Well, I think it's terribly exciting, Jane says. And he's handsome with those dark eyes. You could do worse. That's the Victorian marriage bar. Could do worse. Hardly a ringing endorsement. Anyway, Jane continues conspiratorially. Mary Abbott taught me a glove trick. Drop your right glove to show interest, left to say go away. And if you drop both? You ask dryly. I don't know. Maybe it means you're clumsy? Jane giggles. These secret communication systems kept evolving. Fans, flowers, handkerchiefs, gloves, parasols, even hat positioning or hairstyles could send signals. It became an arms race of coded flirtation. I once found a ridiculous Victorian guide claiming parasols had their own language. Twirling meant, I'm engaged. Pointing at downward meant, I dislike you. Imagine memorizing all these signals. The dinner with Mr. Blackwood is set for Friday evening. Your mother spends the entire week in a frenzy, ordering the cook to prepare his most impressive dishes, polishing the family silver, and arranging fresh flowers in every room. You'd think the queen herself was coming to dine, not a potential suitor. Evelina, for the last time, you must wear the blue silk. Your mother insists, rifling through your wardrobe with mounting frustration. The neckline is most becoming, and Mr. Blackwood has expressed a preference for blue. The blue silk is evening wear, mother, you point out. For a family dinner, the green would be more appropriate. Your mother looks at you as if you've suggested dining in your undergarments. This is not just any family dinner. This is the dinner that could determine your entire future. No pressure, then. The day of the dinner, the household is in chaos. Maids scurry about with fresh linens and polished silverware. The cook has been awake since dawn preparing a 7-course meal. Your father retreats to his study, wisely avoiding the storm until absolutely necessary. You're confined to your room to rest before the evening. Though how anyone could rest with this level of tension is beyond you. Agnes brings you tea and a knowing smile. The whole house has gone mad, she remarks, setting down the tray. Mrs. Davis in the kitchen is threatening to quit if one more person comes down to check on the meal. This is ridiculous. You sigh, sipping your tea. It's just dinner. Agnes gives you a look. It's never just dinner, Miss Evelina. Not in this world. And she's right. In Victorian society, every social interaction is weighted with meaning. Every glance, every word, every carefully timed pause. A dinner invitation to a single gentleman is practically an announcement of intent. The family sizing him up, him evaluating his potential future home. By 6 o'clock, you're dressed in the blue silk. Your mother won that battle. Corseted to within an inch of your life. And your hair is arranged in an elaborate style that required 45 minutes and approximately 100 hairpins to achieve. You can feel at least 3 of them digging into your scalp already. Perfect. Your mother pronounces, circling you like a general inspecting troops before battle. Remember, speak when spoken to, laugh at his jokes, but not too loudly. And for heaven's sake, don't mention those dreadful novels you insist on reading. Heaven forbid you reveal you have actual thoughts. Mr. Blackwood arrives at precisely 7 o'clock, impeccably dressed in evening attire, bearing a small bouquet for your mother and a single perfect rose for you. A gesture that makes your mother practically vibrate with delight and your father raise an eyebrow in quiet amusement. I've read through dozens of Victorian etiquette books for this story, and good lord, the rules for dinner parties were wild. There were specific protocols for everything. Who enters the dining room in what order, how far apart chairs should be placed, how to hold each utensil for different courses. One 1876 guide had an entire chapter just on the proper way to eat soup. Spoiler, if they hear you slurping, you failed at life. Dinner is a carefully choreographed performance. Your father leads your mother into the dining room, followed by Mr. Blackwood escorting you. The seating arrangement is strategic, Mr. Blackwood beside you, but with your mother directly across to monitor every interaction. The conversation is just as scripted. Safe topics only. The weather, pleasant for the season. The latest theater performance, diverting. Mutual acquaintances, all in good health. Thank you. Nothing personal, nothing controversial, nothing that might reveal actual personality. It's like watching actors recite lines from a particularly dull play. Miss Pembroke, Mr. Blackwood says during a lull between courses, your mother tells me you're an accomplished pianist. I'd be honored to hear you play after dinner. And there it is, the after-dinner performance. Another staple of Victorian courtship. Young ladies were expected to display their accomplishments, usually music, singing, or reciting poetry, like circus animals performing tricks. See how cultured your future wife is. Marvel at her decorative talents. I would be delighted. You respond automatically, though the thought makes your palms sweat. You're a mediocre pianist at best, having practiced only because it was expected, not from any real passion or talent. After dinner, the real test begins. According to Victorian custom, the ladies withdraw to the drawing room, leaving the gentlemen to their port and cigars. This brief separation gives your mother the opportunity to grill you on your impressions while simultaneously allowing Mr. Blackwood and your father privacy to discuss more serious matters, like your dowry and marriage prospects. He is most attentive, your mother whispers excitedly in the drawing room. And did you see how he looked at you during the fish course? Most promising. You're not sure what a promising look during the fish course entails, but you nod anyway. When the gentlemen finally join you, your father's expression is inscrutable, but there's a certain satisfaction in his manner that makes your stomach tighten. Some agreement has been reached, some understanding established. Now comes your performance. You take your place at the pianoforte, acutely aware of everyone's eyes on you. Your fingers tremble slightly as you begin a simple Mozart piece. Difficult enough to show skill, but not so challenging that you'll make embarrassing mistakes. Mr. Blackwood stands beside the instrument, turning pages for you. Another ritualized interaction that allows a moment of proximity without impropriety. You're intensely aware of his presence. The faint scent of tobacco from the after-dinner cigars. The careful way he watches for your nod before turning each page. When you finish, there's polite applause and appropriate compliments, regardless of the actual quality of your performance. That's not really the point. The point is that you've demonstrated your suitability as a cultured wife who can entertain guests. The evening continues with conversation in the drawing room. Tea served at precisely the right time, and Mr. Blackwood taking his leave at a respectable hour. Not too early to suggest disinterest, not too late to suggest impropriety. At the door, he bows over your hand, his lips not quite touching your gloved fingers, the closest thing to physical contact permitted in this elaborate courtship dance. Miss Pembroke, thank you for a most enjoyable evening, he says, his eyes meeting yours briefly. Might I have the honor of escorting you and your family to church on Sunday? Church attendance, the most respectable of all courtship activities. In Victorian society, being seen together at church was practically an announcement of serious intentions. Your mother, hovering nearby, practically glows with approval. We would be delighted. Your father answers for you, clapping Mr. Blackwood on the shoulder in a rare display of warmth. Once he's gone, your parents exchange meaningful looks. Well, your mother demands. What did he say to you, Edward? Your father clears his throat. Nothing definite yet, but he expressed his admiration for Elenina and his hope to become better acquainted with our family. I believe his intentions are serious. They discuss you as if you're not standing right there, as if your opinion on the man who might become your husband is irrelevant, because in many ways it is. The decision will ultimately be made by your father, based on factors like Mr. Blackwood's financial prospects and family connections, not on whether you actually like him or could imagine spending your life with him. Later, in the privacy of your bedroom, Agnes helps you out of the elaborate dinner dress and corset. As you take your first deep breath in hours, she looks at you curiously. Well, Miss Elenina, she asks, what did you think of Mr. Blackwood this evening? That's the question, isn't it? What do you think of him? You've now spent perhaps a total of 5 hours in his company, all under strict supervision, engaging only in the most superficial conversation. Do you know him any better than before? Can you make a life-altering decision based on this? He seems pleasant. You offer, which makes Agnes roll her eyes. Pleasant, she repeats. High praise indeed. What would you have me say, Agnes? That I'm madly in love after 5 hours of talking about the weather and listening to him compliment my mediocre piano playing? Agnes sighs as she brushes out your hair. No, miss, but perhaps you could look for smaller signs of character. Did he speak kindly to the servants? Did he listen when you spoke? or merely wait for his turn to talk? Was he patient when your mother told that interminable story about Lady Harrington's garden party? These are surprisingly insightful questions, and you consider them carefully. Mr. Blackwood had thanked the footman who took his hat. He had appeared to listen attentively when you briefly mentioned your interest in botany after the garden visit, and he had smiled politely through your mother's lengthy anecdote without showing impatience. Small things, perhaps, but in a courtship system that reveals so little, perhaps small things are all you have to go on. The next test in this elaborate courtship ritual comes on Sunday. Church attendance was non-negotiable in Victorian life, but who you sat with and walked with to and from services sent clear social signals about relationships and intentions. When Mr. Blackwood meets your family outside the church, heads turn. The message is unmistakable. A courtship is officially underway. You can practically hear the gossip spreading as you walk down the aisle to your family pew, Mr. Blackwood at your side. I once visited a museum exhibit about Victorian church customs that had an entire section on how churches functioned as matchmaking hotspots. After services, young men would wait outside to escort young women home, and who walked with whom became a public declaration of interest. Church wasn't just about religion. It was about putting yourself on display in your Sunday best while scouting potential partners in a parent-approved setting. After the service, Mr. Blackwood joins your family for Sunday luncheon, another significant step in the courtship progression. The meal is less formal than Friday's dinner, but no less laden with meaning. Mr. Blackwood has now been invited into your home twice in 1 week, a clear indication your parents approve of his suit. I was thinking, your mother says as the meal concludes, that perhaps we might all attend the Wilsons' musical evening on Tuesday. They specifically mentioned hoping to see you there, Ella and Nina, and I'm sure they'd be delighted if Mr. Blackwood accompanied us. Another public appearance together. The courtship is accelerating. That sounds delightful, Mr. Blackwood replies. If Miss Pembroke is amenable, of course. All eyes turn to you, though your agreement is assumed. To decline would be a public rejection, an embarrassment to both Mr. Blackwood and your family. I look forward to it, you say, the expected response. After Mr. Blackwood takes his leave, your mother corners you in the drawing room, her expression serious. Ella Nina, I hope you understand how fortunate you are. Mr. Blackwood is everything we could hope for in a match. Well-connected, financially secure, and of impeccable reputation. Your father and I are most pleased with his attentions. Translation, don't mess this up. Yes, mother, you reply. Because what else can you say? She pats your hand. I was worried. You know, after your first season yielded no suitable offers. But Mr. Blackwood is actually a far better match than any of last year's prospects. Sometimes patience is rewarded. The implication being that you're lucky anyone wants you at all, especially after reaching the advanced age of 21. In Victorian terms, you're practically on the shelf. The following days fall into a pattern. Carefully chaperoned outings, public appearances together, brief conversations under watchful eyes. Mr. Blackwood calls at your home regularly, always at the proper hours, always observed by your mother or another suitable chaperone. It's courtship by committee, romance by rote. Tuesday evening brings the Wilsons' musical soiree, a gathering of local families to listen to amateur performances and engage in careful, controlled socialization. Mr. Blackwood arrives to escort your family, offering his arm to you for the short walk to the Wilsons' home, your parents following close behind. The Wilsons' drawing room is crowded with familiar faces, all of whom notice your entrance with Mr. Blackwood. The message is clear. A courtship is well underway, perhaps nearing its conclusion. You can feel the eyes on you, assessing, speculating, judging. Mrs. Wilson, a plump, pleasant woman with a penchant for matchmaking, beams at the sight of you with Mr. Blackwood. Ella Nina, my dear, and Mr. Blackwood. How lovely to see you both. Do come in. We're just about to begin the first performance. The evening progresses with a series of musical offerings of varying quality. Miss Henderson's shrill soprano, young Mr. Thompson's aggressive assault on the pianoforte, Mrs. Wilson's daughter's competent but uninspired violin performance. Through it all, Mr. Blackwood sits beside you, a respectable 6 inches of space between you, occasionally leaning slightly closer to whisper a comment or observation. These tiny moments of near privacy are the most intimate you've been allowed, and you find yourself looking forward to them, not because of any particular affection for Mr. Blackwood, but simply for the novelty of conversation that isn't being actively monitored by your mother. During a brief intermission while refreshments are served, you find yourself momentarily separated from your parents in the crowd. Mr. Blackwood seizes the opportunity. "Miss Pembroke," he says quietly, "might I have a moment of your time? There's something I wish to ask you." Your heart skips a beat. Is this it? The proposal, here in the Wilsons' crowded drawing room, with Mrs. Henderson's off-key rendition of Mozart still ringing in your ears? Of course, you manage to reply. He guides you toward a slightly less crowded corner of the room, still in full view of everyone, but with the illusion of privacy. He looks uncharacteristically nervous, his usual composure slightly ruffled. "Miss Pembroke, Evelina, if I may be so bold," he begins, his voice low. "We've now been in company several times, and I find myself." He pauses, seeming to search for words, unusual for the typically articulate Mr. Blackwood. "Yes?" you prompt, your own pulse quickening despite yourself. "I find myself uncertain," he finally says, which is not at all what you expected. "Uncertain?" you repeat, confused. He glances around, ensuring no one is within earshot. "I've greatly enjoyed our time together, brief and supervised as it's been, but I cannot help feeling that we hardly know each other at all, that this entire process leaves little room for genuine acquaintance." You stare at him, astonished. Is Henry Blackwood, the embodiment of proper Victorian gentility, actually criticizing the very courtship system he's participating in? "I feel exactly the same way," you admit, the words tumbling out before you can stop them. "It's all so performative, like we're actors in a play rather than real people." His expression softens with what looks like relief. "Exactly. I've seen you play the pianoforte and walk through gardens. I've discussed the weather with you at least 24 times. But I have no idea what you actually think about anything of substance. What makes you laugh? What do you dream about?" This is such a departure from the script that you're momentarily speechless. No one has ever acknowledged the absurdity of the system so directly, least of all a participant in it. "What are you suggesting?" you ask, hardly daring to hope for some alternative. He sighs, running a hand through his perfectly arranged hair, another break from proper form. "I don't know. The constraints are considerable, but perhaps we could attempt something slightly more genuine, within the bounds of propriety, of course," he adds hastily. "Like what?" He purses his lips for a moment. "What if I ask you a real question right now? Something beyond the weather and musical preferences." You glance nervously at the crowd, spotting your mother engaged in conversation with Mrs. Wilson, temporarily distracted. "All right. What makes you happy, Evelina Pembroke? Truly happy?" The question catches you off guard with its simplicity and directness. When was the last time anyone asked you that? Has anyone ever asked you that? "Oh, reading," you answer honestly. "Not just novels, though I do enjoy those. Scientific journals, botanical studies, history, learning about the world beyond these drawing rooms and garden parties." "And you?" What makes Henry Blackwood happy? He looks surprised and pleased at the question being turned back on him. "Solitude," he admits. "Not always. I enjoy good company. But there's something about being alone with one's thoughts, free from the constant performance society demands. I spend hours in my study, reading or simply thinking. My mother finds it most concerning," he adds with a small smile. This tiny exchange, this moment of genuine connection, feels more significant than all the formal interactions that preceded it. For the first time, you glimpse the real person behind the proper Victorian gentleman facade, and you find you rather like what you see. The moment is broken by your mother's voice. "Evelina, Mr. Blackwood, you must come hear Miss Wilson's rendition of Beethoven. She's about to begin." Reality reasserts itself. The brief window of authenticity closes as quickly as it opened, and you both resume your prescribed roles, the proper young lady and her attentive suitor, maintaining appropriate distance, exchanging appropriate pleasantries, performing the courtship dance exactly as choreographed. But something has changed. As you take your seat for Miss Wilson's performance, you catch Mr. Blackwood's eye, and there's a new understanding between you, a shared recognition of the absurdity of it all, and perhaps a tentative alliance in your attempt to find something real within the artificial constraints of Victorian courtship. As Miss Wilson massacres Beethoven with enthusiastic incompetence, you find yourself wondering, is it possible to actually get to know someone, to build a genuine connection within a system designed to prevent exactly that? Or are you and Mr. Blackwood doomed to make life-altering decisions based on the flimsiest acquaintance, like everyone else? The most frustrating part of Victorian courtship wasn't just the restrictions themselves. It was that everyone knew they were ridiculous, yet continued enforcing them anyway. It was collective madness, everyone playing along with absurd rules because the social consequences of breaking them were too severe. As the musical evening draws to a close and you prepare to leave, Mr. Blackwood helps you with your shawl, his fingers briefly brushing against your shoulder, the most intimate contact you've had, entirely accidental. Even that tiny touch sends a jolt through you, not necessarily from attraction, but from the sheer novelty of physical contact with someone who isn't your maid or mother. Miss Pembroke, he says formally as your parents approach, thank you for a most enjoyable evening. The pleasure was mine, Mr. Blackwood. You respond equally formally, but your eyes meet, and there's that flash of understanding again, the recognition that you're both playing parts in this elaborate social performance. But perhaps, just perhaps, there might be a way to find something genuine beneath the artifice. As your family walks home, your mother chatters excitedly about how attentive Mr. Blackwood was, how impressed everyone seemed by the match, how fortunate you are to have attracted such an eligible suitor. Your father nods along, occasionally offering a comment. Neither asks what you think or how you feel. That's not part of the script. Later, as Agnes helps you prepare for bed, she notices your distracted expression. Something happened this evening, she observes shrewdly. With Mr. Blackwood. Is it that obvious? You hesitate, then decide to confide in her. Agnes has been your confidant since childhood, the one person with whom you can be honest. He said something unexpected about how ridiculous it is that we're expected to make such important decisions based on such limited acquaintance. About wanting to know the real me, not just the version society demands. Agnes raises an eyebrow. That's unusual. And refreshing, I might add. So the perfect Mr. Blackwood has thoughts of his own beyond proper etiquette and suitable matches. Interesting. It was just a moment, you sigh. Then Mother interrupted, and we went back to discussing the weather and pretending Miss Wilson's playing wasn't making the dog howl. Agnes chuckles as she brushes out your hair. Still, it's something. A crack in the perfect gentleman facade. I wonder what else might be behind it. So do you. That night, as you lie in bed, you find yourself actually looking forward to your next encounter with Mr. Blackwood, curious to see if that moment of authenticity was a one-time aberration or the beginning of something more genuine. The courtship continues its prescribed path over the next weeks. More chaperoned outings, more public appearances, more carefully observed interactions. But now there's a subtle undercurrent, a secret understanding between you and Mr. Blackwood. You've become conspirators of sorts, finding brief moments to exchange real thoughts and feelings within the strict confines of Victorian propriety. As your courtship with Mr. Blackwood progresses, the whispers grow louder. The servants exchange meaningful glances when he calls. Your mother has taken to casually mentioning wedding customs in everyday conversation. Even your father, usually absorbed in business affairs, has begun taking more active interest in your social calendar. Everyone is waiting for the proposal. Everyone except you. Agnes, you ask one evening as she brushes out your hair, how did you know you wanted to marry Thomas? Agnes and the footman Thomas have been quietly engaged for nearly a year, saving for a small cottage, a love match rare in a world where practicality usually trumps affection. Agnes's hands pause briefly. I just knew, miss. When I'm with him, I feel more myself, not less. And the thought of waking up next to him for the next 50 years makes me happy, not anxious. You consider this. When you think about waking up next to Henry Blackwood for the next 50 years, you feel what? Not dread, certainly, but not the quiet joy that lights Agnes's face when she speaks of Thomas. But how can anyone know for sure? You press. Especially when we're never allowed to be ourselves during courtship. Agnes' resume's brushing, her expression thoughtful. That's the gamble, isn't it? You gather what clues you can, and then you leap, hoping there's something solid on the other side. A gamble indeed, a leap of faith with your entire future at stake. The next day brings another step in the courtship dance. Your father announces at breakfast that Mr. Blackwood has requested a private meeting with him in his study that afternoon. Your mother nearly drops her teacup in excitement. Today? Oh, Evelina, we must make sure you look your absolute best. The blue dress, I think, and perhaps the pearl earrings that were your grandmother's. Mother, you say carefully, we don't know why Mr. Blackwood wishes to speak with father. She gives you a look that clearly communicates you're being deliberately obtuse. Don't be ridiculous, Evelina. A gentleman doesn't request a private meeting with a young lady's father to discuss the weather. She's right, of course. There's only one reason for such a meeting. Mr. Blackwood intends to ask your father's permission to propose marriage to you. Not your permission, mind you, your father's. Because in Victorian England, a woman was essentially transferred from one man's authority to another's. Your consent was assumed if your father approved the match. Your feelings on the matter were secondary at best, irrelevant at worst. I found this absolutely wild excerpt from a Victorian marriage manual that said, "The consent of the father should always be obtained before a young man pays his addresses to the daughter, for a young man's character is very much in the father's power." Like, the actual young woman's opinion? Not even mentioned. The household is thrown into a flurry of activity. You're banished to your room to rest while your mother supervises preparation of refreshments for the all-important meeting. Your father retreats to his study to await Mr. Blackwood's arrival, his expression a mixture of satisfaction and the slight discomfort of a man about to engage in an emotional discussion. Agnes helps you change into the blue dress, her movements efficient but gentle. Nervous, Miss Evelina? Terrified, you admit. What if father says yes? Agnes gives you a quizzical look. Isn't that what we're hoping for? Is it? You're not even sure anymore. In the beginning, marriage to Mr. Blackwood seemed like a sentence to be endured. Then, as you glimpsed the real person behind the proper facade, it began seeming more appealing. But now, faced with the reality of it, you're seized by doubt. What if we're making a terrible mistake? What if those few moments of genuine connection aren't enough? What if we marry and discover we're completely incompatible? Agnes sighs, adjusting your necklace. Those are questions every bride asks, miss, but most don't have the luxury of asking them until after the wedding. At precisely 3 o'clock, Mr. Blackwood arrives. From your window, you watch him approach the house, impeccably dressed as always, his posture straight, his stride purposeful. He disappears inside, and you're left to wait. The waiting is excruciating. You pace your room, unable to concentrate on reading or needlework. What are they discussing down there? Your dowry, certainly. Your accomplishments as a potential wife, your family connections. But is anyone considering your happiness? Your compatibility? Your future together as actual human beings rather than as social and economic units entering a contractual arrangement? After what feels like an eternity, but is probably less than an hour, there's a knock at your door. It's your mother, her face flushed with excitement. Evelina, come downstairs at once. Your father and Mr. Blackwood wish to speak with you in the drawing room. This is it, the moment the entire courtship has been building toward. You follow your mother downstairs, your heart pounding so loudly you're sure everyone can hear it. In the drawing room, your father and Mr. Blackwood stand as you enter. Your father looks pleased, Mr. Blackwood, nervous but determined. Evelina, your father begins. Mr. Blackwood has something he wishes to ask you. He and your mother exchange a look, then discreetly withdraw, leaving you alone with Mr. Blackwood for the first time ever. Of course, they're just outside the open door, within earshot and ready to intervene if needed. But it's still a monumental concession to the importance of the moment. Mr. Blackwood takes a step forward, then hesitates, uncharacteristically uncertain for a man normally so composed. Miss Pembroke, Elenina, he begins, then stops, clearing his throat. I find myself at a disadvantage. Despite our weeks of acquaintance, I feel I hardly know how to speak to you without an audience of chaperones. You can't help but smile at this acknowledgement of the absurdity of your situation. It is rather strange, isn't it, to be suddenly granted privacy at this most crucial moment, when we've been denied it throughout our entire acquaintance. He returns your smile, seeming to relax slightly. Indeed, though I suppose it follows the pattern of our peculiar courtship, everything backward and constrained. There's a pause, both of you acutely aware of your parents hovering just outside, listening to every word. I have spoken with your father, Mr. Blackwood continues, his voice more formal now, and he has granted me permission to ask for your hand in marriage. Even though you knew it was coming, the words still land with the weight of an anvil. This is real. This is happening. Before I make my formal proposal, however, he says, lowering his voice slightly, I wanted to ask you something else, something outside the usual script. You look at him, surprised. Yes. Are you certain about me? About this? I know we've had precious few opportunities for genuine conversation, for true knowledge of each other. I find myself drawn to you, intrigued by the glimpses of your mind and character I've been permitted to see. But I can't help wondering if it's enough for either of us. The question takes your breath away. In all your imagined scenarios of this moment, you never expected him to express the very doubts that have been plaguing you. I've been asking myself the same thing, you admit quietly. We've had so little chance to truly know each other. He nods, looking relieved at your honesty. I've been corresponding with a cousin who married an American, he says, his voice barely above a whisper. She tells me that in America, couples are often permitted courtship walks alone together. No chaperones, just the two people getting to know each other. Can you imagine such freedom? You try to picture it, walking with Mr. Blackwood, just the two of you, able to speak freely without constant supervision. It seems both thrilling and terrifying. It sounds scandalous, you reply with a small smile. And wonderful. He takes a deep breath. I cannot offer you such freedom, not in our society. But I can offer you honesty, and my promise to always seek the real Elenina beneath the proper Miss Pembroke everyone else sees. If you'll grant me the same courtesy, to see the real Henry, not just Mr. Blackwood the suitable match. It's not a traditional proposal, no flowery declaration of love, no going down on one knee. Instead, it's something rarer and perhaps more valuable, an acknowledgement of your situation and a promise to make the best of it together. I believe I would like that very much, you say softly. He smiles, then remembers himself and assumes a more proper stance, raising his voice slightly for the benefit of your listening parents. Miss Pembroke, would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife? And there it is, the question that will determine the course of your entire future, asked by a man you're still getting to know, in a ritual choreographed by society rather than genuine feeling. Yes, Mr. Blackwood, you respond, equally formal. I would be honored to accept your proposal. There's a barely suppressed squeal from the hallway, and your parents reappear, beaming with satisfaction. Your mother is already dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. Your father looks as pleased as you've ever seen him. Wonderful news, your mother exclaims. We must begin planning immediately. June weddings are traditional in our family, of course, and we'll need to announce the engagement formally. As she launches into wedding plans, Mr. Blackwood, Henry, catches your eye over her head and gives you a small, private smile. Whatever happens next, at least you're in this together, both aware of the absurdity of the system and determined to find something genuine within it. The engagement changes everything and nothing. Suddenly, you're granted slightly more freedom, allowed to sit closer together, walk with less chaperone interference, exchange slightly more personal conversation. But the invisible constraints of Victorian society remain, like an ever-present cage with gilded bars. The day after the proposal, a package arrives, a beautiful gold ring set with a perfect diamond, accompanied by a note in Henry's handwriting. with sincere wishes for your happiness in our future together. Yours, HB. Your mother sniffles proudly as the ring is placed on your finger with appropriate ceremony. More gifts follow in the coming days. A delicate gold locket containing a lock of Henry's hair, the Victorian equivalent of a boyfriend's selfie. A beautifully bound book of poetry with a personal inscription, a pair of kid gloves of the finest quality. Each present carefully calibrated, personal enough to show attention, but not so intimate as to be improper. The next stage of this elaborate Victorian engagement ritual is the formal announcement, first in person to family and close friends, then by mail to distant connections, and finally in the Times for all of society to see. Your mother throws a small dinner party for the initial announcement, inviting your closest family friends to share in the happy news. Watching the reactions is fascinating. Your mother's friends coo and exclaim with practiced delight. Your father's business associates offer hearty congratulations and knowing looks, another advantageous alliance secured. Your younger sister Jane practically bounces with excitement at the prospect of a wedding, while your married cousin Margaret gives you a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes, leaving you to wonder what wisdom or warning she might offer if you could speak privately. The newspaper announcement feels strangely official, as if your future wasn't truly decided until it was printed in black and white for all to see. Mr. and Mrs. Edward Pembroke are pleased to announce the engagement of their daughter, Miss Ellalinina Pembroke, to Mr. Henry Blackwood, son of the late Mr. James Blackwood and Mrs. Blackwood of Yorkshire. The wedding will take place in June at St. Mary's Church. Just like that, your fate is sealed in public print. There's no going back now without causing a scandal that would ruin both families' reputations. The funny thing about Victorian engagements is that while they granted slightly more freedom to the couple, they also came with a whole new set of rules and expectations. I found an etiquette book from 1883 that laid out all the things an engaged couple could and couldn't do. They could hold hands, while wearing gloves, of course. Take walks, with a chaperone at a discreet distance. Exchange certain types of gifts, nothing too personal. But they still couldn't be alone together. Couldn't use each other's first names in public. Absolutely couldn't display physical affection beyond the most restrained hand-holding. With your engagement officially announced, wedding preparations begin in earnest. Your mother transforms overnight from anxious matchmaker to manic wedding planner, obsessing over every detail from the church flowers to the wedding breakfast menu. Ellalinina, we simply must visit the dressmaker this week, she declares over breakfast. Mrs. Harrington's daughter's wedding dress took nearly 3 months to complete, and we have less than 4 months until June. The wedding dress, the ultimate symbol of the Victorian bride. White, of course, thanks to Queen Victoria's trend-setting white wedding gown when she married Prince Albert. Elaborate with yards of delicate lace, intricate beading, and a waist cinched to physically painful proportions. A dress designed not for comfort or practicality, but as a visual representation of purity, wealth, and feminine subjugation. Your first fitting is an ordeal that makes your daily corseting seem like casual comfort by comparison. The dressmaker, Mrs. Phillips, circles you like a hawk, measuring, pinning, and occasionally poking you with pins while muttering about your problematic waistline. We'll need to take it in at least 2 more inches, she declares, yanking at the sample corset with alarming vigor. A bride must look her absolute best, and nothing flatters like a tiny waist. I can hardly breathe as it is, you protest weakly. Mrs. Phillips gives you a look that clearly communicates breathing is a secondary concern on your wedding day. Beauty requires sacrifice, Miss Pembroke. Besides, the ceremony is but an hour, then the wedding breakfast. You can loosen it afterward. Your mother nods in agreement, apparently unconcerned that you might actually faint during your own wedding vows from lack of oxygen. The dress itself is admittedly beautiful. Ivory silk with delicate lace overlay, tiny pearl beading along the bodice, and a skirt wide enough to make doorways a navigational challenge. Looking at the preliminary sketches, you can't help but wonder what Henry will think when he sees you in it. Henry. It still feels strange to think of Mr. Blackwood by his given name, even in the privacy of your own thoughts. Despite your engagement, You still refer to each other as Miss Pembroke and Mr. Blackwood in public, as Victorian etiquette demands. Only in your private correspondence, another new privilege of engagement, do you address each other by your first names. The letters become your lifeline. Finally, a way to communicate directly without chaperones or social constraints. Of course, there are still limits. Nothing too personal or passionate would be proper, even between an engaged couple. But compared to the stifled conversations of your courtship, these letters are a revelation. Henry writes about his daily life, his thoughts on books you've both read, his plans for the future, your future together. You respond in kind, gradually revealing more of yourself, testing the waters of genuine connection. In one particularly meaningful letter, he mentions a small cottage on his family's estate. Nothing grand, but peacefully situated by a stream with a garden that's sadly neglected but has potential. I thought perhaps we might make it our own little retreat, a place away from society's constant scrutiny where we could simply be ourselves. The idea is intoxicating, a private space just for the two of you, away from watchful eyes and social expectations. You find yourself daydreaming about it during tedious wedding planning sessions with your mother, imagining lazy afternoons reading by the stream, evenings spent in actual conversation rather than formal dinner parties, mornings waking up to birdsong rather than the demands of social calendars. But first, you have to get through the wedding itself, an event that grows more elaborate with each passing day as your mother's plans expand. The Harringtons and the Wilsons must be invited, of course, she muses, reviewing her guest list for the 100th time. And the Thompsons, though their youngest daughter's behavior at the last musical evening was most improper. Perhaps just the parents and the older children. The guest list already numbers over 100. Most of them people you barely know. Business connections, distant relatives, social acquaintances invited more for appearance's sake than any genuine connection to you or Henry. The wedding isn't really about you anyway. It's a social event, a public demonstration of family status and alliances, with you and Henry as merely the central decorations. Amidst the whirlwind of wedding preparations, you and Henry continue your carefully supervised courtship. He calls at your home regularly, taking tea with your family, accompanying you on walks, your mother or sister always a few paces behind, escorting your family to church and social events. During one such visit, you manage a rare moment of semi-privacy in the garden while your mother is distracted by a neighbor calling over the fence about some parish matter. How are you bearing up under the wedding preparations? Henry asks quietly. Your mother seems to be approaching it with military precision. You laugh. I feel rather like a foot soldier being deployed according to her strategic vision. Yesterday, she spent 3 hours debating the merits of different cake decorations. My mother is similarly engaged, he admits. She's already redecorating rooms in our house that she's certain you'll find lacking. Our house. The words send a small shiver through you. Soon you'll be leaving your family home to live with Henry and his mother, another common arrangement in Victorian marriages. Your entire life will be uprooted and replanted in new soil, under the authority of a new household. Are you nervous? He asks, watching your face carefully. About the wedding? About everything after. The everything after hangs in the air between you, laden with unspoken implications. The wedding night, physical intimacy, the reality of married life together. All things that proper Victorian etiquette forbids you from discussing explicitly, even with the man you're about to marry. Yes, you admit simply. Aren't you? He nods, his expression serious. I am. Despite our letters, despite these months of acquaintance, I feel there's still so much unknown between us. So much we haven't been permitted to discover about each other. It's a startlingly honest admission, especially from a Victorian gentleman who's supposed to project confidence and certainty at all times. I'm afraid, you confess, your voice barely above a whisper, that we've made this momentous decision based on too little information, that we're strangers entering a lifetime commitment. He's quiet for a moment, considering. Perhaps we are, in some ways. But I've come to believe that marriage isn't a destination, but a journey. We may be starting as relative strangers, but we have a lifetime to become whatever we choose to become to each other. It's a surprisingly modern perspective, especially coming from someone raised in the rigid Victorian system. Before you can respond, your mother returns, and the moment of honesty passes, replaced once again by the proper script of engaged couple in polite society. As the wedding approaches, the preparations intensify. Your trousseau, the collection of clothes, linens, and personal items you'll take to your new home, must be assembled and displayed for female friends and relatives to inspect and admire. Every item is scrutinized. The quality of your nightgowns, modest but made of the finest cotton. The embroidery on your handkerchiefs, done by your own hand, as is proper. Even the number of petticoats packed away in lavender-scented tissue paper. The trousseau display is yet another performance, a public demonstration of your preparedness for married life. Your mother's friends exclaim over the fineness of the stitching, the quality of the fabrics, the appropriateness of each item. It's like being a horse at auction, your value assessed through the proxy of your possessions. Through it all, you and Henry continue to exchange letters, building a fragile bridge of understanding between the public performances you're both required to give. In one particularly meaningful exchange, he writes, "I've been thinking about our conversation in the garden, about being strangers embarking on a lifetime together. It's a daunting prospect, certainly, but I find myself increasingly optimistic. The glimpses I've had of the real Elenina, your intelligence, your quiet humor, your thoughtfulness, make me eager to discover more. Perhaps our unconventional beginning will lead to something more genuine than many marriages founded on the illusion of knowledge." You read and reread this letter late at night, finding comfort in his words. Perhaps he's right. Perhaps this strange, backward system might still result in something worthwhile, something real. Or perhaps you're both deluding yourselves, clinging to optimism in the face of a fundamentally flawed arrangement. Only time will tell. As the wedding day approaches, one final ritual remains: the discussion of certain womanly matters related to marriage. This delicate task falls to your mother, who approaches it with visible discomfort one evening about 2 weeks before the wedding. "Elenina, dear," she begins stiffly, closing your bedroom door for privacy. "There are certain aspects of married life that we must discuss before your wedding day. You brace yourself for the notorious Victorian birds and bees talk, rumored among your friends to be vague to the point of uselessness and frightening in its implications. A wife has certain duties to her husband," your mother continues, staring fixedly at a point somewhere over your left shoulder. "These duties may seem challenging at first, but remember that they are natural and ordained by God for the continuation of the family." This is about as specific as Victorian sex education gets. Vague references to duties and challenges, without any actual information about what those duties entail or how to perform them. Women were expected to enter marriage completely ignorant of physical intimacy, then somehow transform overnight into willing partners in the marital bed. The most important thing to remember, your mother presses on, her discomfort palpable, is that a lady endures with dignity and thinks of England. Think of England. The notorious Victorian advice to women regarding marital relations: lie back, think of England, and wait for it to be over. Sex not as a mutual pleasure, but as a patriotic duty to be endured. Are there any questions you wish to ask? Your mother finishes, clearly hoping the answer is no. You have dozens of questions, of course. What exactly happens on the wedding night? Will it hurt? Is it possible to enjoy it? Or is endurance the best I can hope for? What if I do everything wrong? What if Henry is disappointed? But you know your mother won't, can't, answer these questions. Victorian prudery has rendered her as incapable of discussing these matters as it has rendered you ignorant of them. "No, mother," you reply dutifully. "Thank you for your guidance." She looks relieved, pats your hand awkwardly, and beats a hasty retreat, her uncomfortable maternal duty discharged. Later, you confide in Agnes, hoping for more practical information from someone less constrained by upper-class propriety. "Agnes, what happens on the wedding night?" "Really?" Agnes looks surprised, then thoughtful. "Well, miss, It's different for everyone, I suppose. My sister says it was scary at first, but got better. My cousin says she's always found it quite pleasant. My aunt claims it's a woman's cross to bear. But what actually happens? You press, desperate for some concrete information before you're thrust into the unknown. Agnes sighs. I'm not married yet myself, so I can only tell you what I've been told. There's joining between a man and a woman. It can hurt the first time, but not always. And despite what the fine ladies say about thinking of England, I'm told it can be enjoyable if the husband is considerate. It's still frustratingly vague, but more than your mother offered. The idea that physical intimacy might be enjoyable rather than merely endurable is a novel concept, one that sends a small thrill of hope through you. Do you think Henry will be considerate? You ask quietly. Agnes considers this. From what I've seen of Mr. Blackwood, he seems a thoughtful man, kind to servants, patient with your mother's endless stories, attentive to your comfort. Those are good signs, I'd say. It's a perspective you hadn't considered, that Henry's general character might be indicative of how he'll behave in the marital bed. It's a small comfort in the face of so much uncertainty. As the wedding day draws nearer, your anxiety increases, not just about the wedding night, but about all aspects of married life. You'll be moving to Henry's family home, living under the same roof as his mother, whom you've met only twice at formal dinners. You'll be responsible for running a household, managing servants, becoming the mistress of a home when you've barely been allowed to make decisions about your own daily schedule. And underlying it all is the most fundamental question. Will you and Henry, these two near strangers pushed together by social convention, find happiness together? Or will you join the ranks of so many Victorian couples living parallel lives under the same roof, connected by social ties, but emotionally distant? The night before your wedding, you can't sleep. Tomorrow, everything changes. Tomorrow, you become Mrs. Henry Blackwood, leaving behind not just your family home, but your identity as Evelina Pembroke. In Victorian society, a married woman had no legal existence separate from her husband. Her property became his, her legal rights subsumed under his authority, her very self absorbed into his identity. As you stare at the ceiling, wondering what the future holds, there's a soft knock at your door. It's Agnes, carrying a small package. This just arrived for you, Miss Evelina. A boy delivered it, said it was urgent. You open the package to find a small book and a note in Henry's handwriting. Evelina, I know it's considered bad luck for the groom to see the bride before the wedding, so I've sent this instead. It's a journal of my thoughts over these past months of our courtship and engagement. Not the polite, edited versions I've been able to share in letters, but my true thoughts, hopes, and fears. I thought you might find comfort in knowing that whatever uncertainties tomorrow brings, we face them with the same questions and the same determination to build something genuine together. Until tomorrow, Henry. You open the journal with trembling hands, reading by candlelight as Henry's private thoughts unfold before you. His initial skepticism about the courtship process, his surprise at finding himself genuinely drawn to you, his frustrations with the constraints placed upon your interactions, his hopes for your future together. It's the most intimate gift possible in a society that forbids true intimacy before marriage. A glimpse into his unfiltered thoughts, his true self beneath the proper exterior. As you read, you feel the distance between you shrinking, not through physical proximity, but through genuine understanding. And for the first time since your engagement began, you feel not just resignation or cautious optimism about your impending marriage, but genuine hope. Hope that despite the backward system that brought you together, despite the lack of choice and agency in the process, you and Henry might build something real and meaningful together. You close the journal, holding it against your chest, as if it might somehow bring you closer to its author. Tomorrow, you will stand before God and society and pledge yourself to a man you're still getting to know. It's terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Whatever happens next, at least you won't be facing it alone. You and Henry, two players in the elaborate Victorian marriage game. But perhaps, just perhaps, two people who might find genuine connection despite the flawed system that brought you together. The morning of your wedding dawns bright and clear. Your stomach is in knots, not from excitement, but from the sheer weight of expectations. Yesterday, your mother spent 3 hours coaching you on proper wedding etiquette, as if pledging your life to someone requires specialized training. Agnes, you whisper as she tightens your corset to its most punishing degree yet. What if I trip walking down the aisle? The entire congregation will see. Agnes snorts, then quickly composes herself. Miss Elenina, just remember to keep your eyes modestly lowered when saying your vows. And for heaven's sake, don't drop the bouquet when the Archbishop asks who gives you away. Ah, yes, the giving away. In Victorian England, a father literally transferred ownership of his daughter to her husband during the ceremony. You are property changing hands. The dress is even more constricting than during fittings. Layers of silk and lace weighing you down like ceremonial armor. The corset makes shallow breathing a necessity. The wire cage crinoline forces you to move with exaggerated care. You're a perfectly packaged bride, pale, delicate, and utterly immobilized. Your mother circles you with tears in her eyes. My dear, you look absolutely like livestock at a county fair. You think but don't say. Radiant. She finishes, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Mr. Blackwood will be speechless. You hope he's not expecting poetry then, you mutter. Agnes stifles a laugh, while your mother pretends not to hear. The carriage ride to St. Mary's is torture. Every bump in the road threatening to dislodge hairpins or wrinkle fabric. Your father sits across from you, uncharacteristically emotional. Elenina, he begins gruffly, then clears his throat. The Blackwoods are a fine family. You've made an excellent match. Translation, your dowry was well spent. At the church, the organ music swells as you take your father's arm. The walk down the aisle is a blur of faces, some smiling, some assessing, all staring. At the altar stands Henry, looking uncharacteristically nervous in his formal mourning coat. The ceremony itself is mercifully brief. Vows exchanged, rings placed, signatures witnessed. When the Archbishop pronounces you man and wife, Henry lifts your veil, his fingers brushing your cheek in the first truly intimate contact you've ever shared. His eyes meet yours, and there's something there beyond proper Victorian decorum, warmth, reassurance, perhaps even affection. The wedding breakfast back at your parents' house is an elaborate affair. 5 courses served to over 100 guests while you sit stiffly at the head table, smiling until your face aches. Henry's hand finds yours under the tablecloth, a small rebellion against propriety. By late afternoon, it's time to change into your traveling dress for the journey to Yorkshire. Agnes helps you out of the wedding gown with visible relief. Thank God that's over, you whisper as she loosens the corset laces. The hard part is just beginning, Agnes murmurs back, but her eyes are kind. When you reappear downstairs, the guests have gathered to see you off. Rice is thrown. For fertility, tears are shed, mostly your mother's. And then suddenly you're alone with Henry in his carriage, rolling away from everything you've ever known. The first hour of the journey passes in near silence. Now that the performance is over, neither of you seems to know what to say. Henry clears his throat. You look, don't say radiant. You interrupt, then immediately blush at your forwardness. He laughs, a warm, genuine sound you've rarely heard during your courtship. I was going to say uncomfortable. That dress looks like it's strangling you. You laugh too, some of the tension dissolving. It's worse than it looks. I think the corset has cracked one of my ribs. Here, Henry surprises you by producing a small silver flask. Brandy. Medicinal purposes only, of course. Of course, you agree solemnly, taking a sip. The liquor burns going down, but warms you from within. The rest of the journey passes more easily. You talk, really talk, for the first time, sharing stories from your childhood, books you've loved, even mildly scandalous opinions about politics. Without chaperones or social constraints, conversation flows naturally. It's dark when you arrive at Blackwood Manor, an imposing stone house silhouetted against the twilight sky. Henry helps you down from the carriage, his hand lingering on yours a moment longer than strictly proper. Welcome home, Mrs. Blackwood, he says softly. The housekeeper, Mrs. Wilson, no relation to your maid, greets you with polite reserve. showing you to the master bedroom where your things have already been unpacked. Henry's mother has thoughtfully retired early, leaving you to settle in without awkward introductions. The bedroom is grand but impersonal, clearly a man's domain with its dark wood furniture and hunting prints. Only the new dressing table and vase of fresh flowers suggest any accommodation has been made for a wife. Agnes would have been here to help you prepare for bed, but of course she remained in London. You'll have to manage alone tonight. The thought makes your hands tremble as you unpin your hair. A soft knock at the connecting door startles you. Evelina? Henry's voice is hesitant. May I come in? You take a deep breath. Yes. He enters wearing a dressing gown over his nightshirt, the most casual you've ever seen him. His hair is slightly damp, as if he's just washed. You look? He begins, then stops, seeming to reconsider his words. Terrified, you supply, attempting a smile. He returns the smile. I was going to say beautiful, but I can see the terror as well. He crosses to stand before you, close but not touching. We don't have to. That is, there's no need to. You realize he's as nervous as you are. The thought is oddly comforting. I know what we're supposed to do, you say quietly. In theory, at least. Henry exhales a laugh. More than I did at your age. When I married at 22, I'd been given precisely one piece of advice. Be gentle. You look up at him, surprised. You've been married before? No, he says quickly. I meant, when my father married at 22. My mother told me that's all his father said to him. Be gentle. Oh, the moment stretches between you, fragile and uncertain. Henry reaches out slowly, giving you every opportunity to pull away, and tucks a loose strand of hair behind your ear. His fingers linger against your cheek. May I kiss you, Evelina? The question is so simple, so respectful, so unlike the domineering Victorian husband you feared, that tears prick your eyes. You nod. His lips are warm and surprisingly soft against yours, the kiss tender rather than demanding. When he pulls back, there's no mistaking the affection in his eyes. We have time, he murmurs. All the time in the world to learn each other. That night, you discover the truth behind Victorianisms like marital duties and thinking of England, but also that Agnes was right about considerate husbands. Henry is patient, attentive, and far more concerned with your comfort than his own pleasure. There's awkwardness, yes, and some discomfort, but also unexpected tenderness that lingers long after the physical act is over. As you drift to sleep in your husband's arms, the rigid constraints of Victorian courtship finally loosen. One thought repeats in your mind. This might, just might, be the beginning of something real. The return to Yorkshire and Henry's family home brings you crashing back to Victorian reality after the idyllic fortnight by the sea. The Blackwood estate is impressive, a solid stone manor house set amidst carefully landscaped grounds, with a staff of 12 servants and Henry's mother presiding over it all like a general surveying her troops. Mrs. Blackwood Sr. is exactly what you feared, a traditional Victorian matriarch to her core, convinced of the rightness of rigid social hierarchies and determined to mold her new daughter-in-law into a proper reflection of the family status. Evelina, dear, she says on your first morning, her tone pleasant but brooking no argument. We breakfast at 8 precisely in this household. The housekeeper will attend you at 7 to discuss the day's menus and household matters. Translation, you may be mistress of this house in name, but I still run the show. And I've taken the liberty of arranging calls with the most important families in the neighborhood this week, she continues, buttering her toast with military precision. It's essential that you be properly introduced as Henry's wife without delay. The social rounds begin immediately. A whirlwind of formal visits to neighbors, tea with the vicar's wife, polite conversations with local gentry, all under your mother-in-law's watchful eye. You're displayed like a prize heifer at a county fair, your manners and deportment subtly assessed by each new acquaintance. Mrs. Blackwood is from London. Your mother-in-law explains to Mrs. Harrove, the most formidable of the local matrons. We're working on acquainting her with our Yorkshire ways. The condescension is clear, as is the implication. You're an outsider who must be molded to fit into her new environment. Your London background, which might have been an advantage in some circles, is presented as a flaw to be overcome. Through it all, Henry is supportive but constrained by his own position. In public, he must maintain the appearance of a proper Victorian husband, authoritative, dignified, not overly attentive to his wife. His mother watches him too, ready to correct any deviation from proper form. But in private, in the blessed privacy of your shared bedroom at night, the masks come off, and you find the connection you built during your honeymoon hasn't disappeared entirely. "I'm sorry about Mother," Henry says quietly one night after a particularly trying dinner where your mother-in-law criticized everything from your posture to your conversation topics. She means well, but she's set in her ways. Set in her ways is a polite way of saying tyrannical and controlling, but you appreciate his diplomacy. "It's all right," you sigh, letting Agnes's replacement, a stiff young woman named Wilson who clearly reports everything to your mother-in-law, help you out of your evening dress. "I expected as much." Once Wilson leaves, closing the bedroom door behind her, Henry comes to sit beside you at your dressing table as you remove your jewelry and hairpins. "It won't always be like this," he promises, his voice low to prevent eavesdropping. "I've spoken to the steward about beginning renovations on the cottage I mentioned. By autumn, it should be habitable enough for occasional retreats, at least." The thought of a space that would be truly yours, away from his mother's critical eye and the servant's watchful attention, sustains you through the difficult adjustment period. Meanwhile, you begin the process of assuming your role as mistress of the household, a challenging task under your mother-in-law's shadow. Victorian household management was no small feat, even for an experienced matron. For a young bride, it was a formidable responsibility. Each morning, you meet with the housekeeper, Mrs. Wilson, no relation to your lady's maid, though equally dour, to review the day's menus, household tasks, and any issues requiring the mistress's attention. Mrs. Wilson has served the elder Mrs. Blackwood for 20 years and makes it clear through subtle insubordination that she considers you a temporary inconvenience until her real mistress resumes control. The Victorian household was a complex machine with many moving parts. A staff of servants, each with specific roles and hierarchies, an endless round of social obligations to maintain the family status, household accounts to be balanced, charitable duties to be fulfilled, and always, the maintenance of proper appearances. For a young wife like yourself, trained primarily in decorative accomplishments rather than practical management, the learning curve is steep. Your mother-in-law alternates between criticizing your efforts and stepping in to handle matters herself, neither approach particularly helpful to your development as mistress of the house. "Elenina, dear," she sighs, reviewing your menu selections for an upcoming dinner party. "We simply cannot serve fish before meat, and the wine pairings are all wrong. Let me make the necessary adjustments." I found this absolutely wild Victorian household management book that was basically a massive doorstop. Over 1,000 pages of instructions for running a proper home. Everything from how to hire and fire servants to recipes for homemade furniture polish. Mrs. Beaton's book of household management was like the Victorian equivalent of a college degree in domestic science. Women were expected to master all this instantly upon marriage, usually with zero practical experience. One afternoon, about a month after your return to Yorkshire, you find yourself alone in the library, a rare moment of solitude in the busy household. You've taken refuge among the books, seeking a brief escape from your mother-in-law's constant supervision and the servants' judging eyes. There you are. Henry's voice breaks into your thoughts as he enters the room, closing the door behind him. "I've been looking for you." "I'm hiding," you admit with a small smile. "Is that terribly cowardly of me?" He laughs softly, joining you on the window seat, overlooking the garden. "If so, then I'm equally guilty. I've just spent 20 minutes pretending to inspect the stables to avoid Mother's lecture on proper management of the tenant farmers. This shared conspiracy against the constraints of your lives, this mutual recognition of the absurdity of it all, has become the foundation of your growing bond. In these private moments, you're not Mrs. Blackwood, the proper Victorian wife, and Henry Blackwood, the respectable gentleman. You're simply Elenina and Henry, two allies navigating a world of rigid expectations together. "I have news," he says, his voice lowered despite the closed door. "The cottage renovations are progressing faster than expected. The roof is repaired, the chimney cleared, and the worst of the damp addressed. It's still rather sparse inside, but it might be habitable by the end of the month." The prospect of this escape, this private space away from the main house and its watchful eyes, fills you with such joy that you impulsively reach for his hand, a gesture too intimate for proper Victorian daytime behavior. "Sorry," you say, starting to withdraw your hand, but he holds it firmly. "No apologies needed," he says softly. "Not between us. Not here." This becomes your pattern in the months that follow: public conformity, private rebellion. In company, you play your prescribed roles perfectly. You are the proper Victorian couple. He the authoritative husband whose word is law. You the dutiful wife whose purpose is to support and obey. Your mother-in-law watches approvingly as you perform exactly as expected, never suspecting the private reality behind the public mask. Because in private, in the sanctuary of your bedroom at night, in stolen moments in the library or garden, and eventually gloriously in the small cottage that becomes your personal retreat, you are something different. Partners, equals insofar as Victorian society allows. Two people building a genuine connection within the rigid framework of 19th century marriage. The cottage becomes your haven, just as Henry promised. It's nothing grand, a simple stone building with 4 rooms set beside a stream at the edge of the estate. But it's yours in a way the main house never can be. Here, there are no servants hovering in doorways, no mother-in-law monitoring your every word and gesture, no social performance required. What shall we call it? Henry asks one autumn afternoon as you sit together by the cottage's small fireplace, a rare day of freedom from social obligations stretching before you. Our cottage should have a name, don't you think? Something that's meaningful to us. You consider this, watching the flames dance in the grate. "Haven," you suggest finally, "because that's what it is for us." He smiles, understanding completely. Haven it is. In Haven, you can be yourselves in a way that's impossible elsewhere. You read books that would raise eyebrows in proper society, scientific journals, philosophical treatises, even the occasional novel that Mrs. Blackwood Sr. would consider scandalously modern. You discuss ideas freely, debate politics and social issues with an openness that would shock your neighbors if they overheard. And as the months pass, your relationship continues to develop in ways that defy Victorian expectations. You become not just legally bound spouses, but genuine companions, intellectual partners, and increasingly emotional intimates. Physical intimacy, too, evolves beyond the conventional Victorian understanding of marital relations. Unlike many men of his era, Henry believes in mutual pleasure and treats your body with respect and tenderness rather than as his property to use as he wishes. In a time when women were taught to lie back and think of England, you discover the radical possibility of female desire and fulfillment. One winter evening, as you lie together in the warmth of your bed at Haven, Henry broaches a subject that's been on both your minds. "Mother asked again today when we might expect an addition to the family," he says carefully. "It's been 6 months since our marriage, and she's growing concerned. Children, the expected and primary purpose of Victorian marriage. A wife's most important duty was to provide heirs, preferably male ones, to continue the family line. A marriage without children was considered not just unfortunate, but almost a failure, particularly for the wife. Are you concerned?" you ask, studying his face in the firelight. "I'm patient," he replies, choosing his words carefully. "These things happen in their own time, and I'm not unhappy with our life as it is." It's a remarkably progressive attitude for a Victorian husband, who would typically view children as a right and their absence as a problem to be solved or blamed on his wife's deficiency. "But you do want children," you press, curious about his true feelings on the matter. "I do," he admits. "Not for the reasons Mother wants them, to secure the family name and property and all that, but because I think we might be rather good at it. At raising children together, I mean. The idea warms you. Not children as duty or obligation, but as extensions of the partnership you've built, little people to raise with the love and respect that's often missing in rigid Victorian parenting. I'd like that too, you say softly, though I confess I'm selfish enough to enjoy having you to myself for now. He smiles, pulling you closer. Then we'll continue to scandalize my mother by failing to produce an heir on her preferred schedule. And when it happens, if it happens, we'll welcome it. This approach, patient, mutual, focused on your relationship rather than social expectations, exemplifies how you and Henry have carved out your own understanding of marriage within the Victorian framework. Not rejecting it entirely. You couldn't, not without facing severe social consequences, but reinterpreting it, finding spaces for authenticity within constraint. As your first year of marriage progresses toward its anniversary, you settle into a rhythm of life that balances public conformity with private authenticity. At the main house and in society, you perform your roles flawlessly, the respectable Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, pillars of the community, models of proper Victorian marriage. Your mother-in-law, while still critical of what she sees as your London ways, has grudgingly accepted your position in the household, particularly as you've proven competent in managing domestic affairs. But your real life, your true marriage, exists in the moments between performances, in quiet conversations over breakfast before the day's social obligations begin, in private jokes exchanged through glances across crowded drawing rooms, in notes slipped between pages of books you share, in Haven, your cottage retreat, where you can be Henry and Evelina rather than Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood. It's not a perfect arrangement. Victorian society's constraints are real and powerful, limiting both your lives in ways large and small. As a woman, you still lack legal rights, independence, and the freedom to pursue many interests openly. As a man, Henry still bears the weight of social expectations about masculinity, authority, and public behavior. But within these constraints, you've built something genuine, a partnership that honors both your shared identity as husband and wife and your individual selves as Henry and Evelina. A marriage founded on mutual respect, growing affection, and the radical notion that a Victorian union might be about more than social alliance and proper performance. On the evening of your first anniversary, Henry presents you with a small package carefully wrapped. "What's this?" you ask, surprised. Gift-giving between married couples wasn't particularly common in Victorian times, especially after the wedding. "Open it," he encourages, watching your face. Inside the package is a small silver key on a delicate chain. "It's for Haven," he explains as you look at it quizzically. "I've had a lock fitted to the door, a new one with only 2 keys. One for you, one for me. No one else, not even my mother, can enter without our permission." The symbolism isn't lost on you. In a world where privacy was scarce and married women had few rights to personal space, this key represents something precious, a space that's truly yours, a domain where you have authority, a physical manifestation of the private world you and Henry have created together. "It's perfect," you say, slipping the chain around your neck, the key resting against your heart. "Thank you." Later that night, in the privacy of your bedroom, Henry holds you close, his voice soft in the darkness. "Are you happy, Evelina, with this life we've built?" It's a complex question. By the standards of most Victorian marriages, yours is exceptionally fortunate. A considerate husband, material comfort, even genuine affection and intellectual connection. But measured against modern ideals of freedom and equality, it's still constrained by the rigid expectations of your era. "I'm happy with us," you answer honestly, "with what we've created together despite everything. It's not what I imagined when I first entered the marriage market as Miss Evelina Pembroke, terrified of ending up with a tyrant or a bore. It's better, in ways I couldn't have anticipated." He seems to understand the nuance in your response, the recognition of both the good you've built together and the limitations imposed by your time and society. "I often wonder," he muses, "what marriage might be like in the future, 100 years from now perhaps. Whether couples will have more freedom to know each other properly before committing, whether wives will have more rights, more independence." "Perhaps they will," you say, imagining this distant future. Perhaps women will be able to choose their own paths, pursue education or careers, select husbands based on genuine compatibility rather than social advantage. I'd like to think so, Henry replies, though I confess selfishly that I'm glad you ended up in this time with me. You smile in the darkness, understanding the sentiment. For all its flaws, this is your reality. This life, this marriage, this partnership you forged against the odds of Victorian arrangement. As am I, you admit, resting your head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. As am I. The Victorian marriage system was a flawed, often damaging institution designed to perpetuate social hierarchies and patriarchal control rather than foster genuine connection between spouses. For many, perhaps most, couples, it resulted in unions of convenience at best, misery at worst, with husbands and wives living parallel lives under the same roof, connected by legal bonds but emotionally distant. But humans are remarkably adaptable creatures, capable of finding authenticity even within the most rigid constraints. Some Victorian couples, like you and Henry, managed to build something genuine within the framework they were given, not by rejecting the system entirely, which would have brought severe social consequences, but by conforming publicly while creating private spaces for authenticity. These spaces might be physical, like your haven cottage, or metaphorical, moments of honest conversation in the privacy of a bedroom, shared jokes that no one else understands, letters that reveal true thoughts behind proper facades. Small rebellions, perhaps, but meaningful ones that allow genuine connection to flourish even within Victorian constraint. As you drift towards sleep in your husband's arms, you reflect on the journey that brought you here, from the artificial courtship with its fans and handkerchiefs and chaperoned walks to this moment of quiet intimacy with the man who began as Mr. Blackwood, the suitable match, and has become Henry, your partner, your friend, your love. The system was flawed, but you beat it at its own game, finding authentic connection despite every obstacle placed in your way. Not through grand rebellion, but through small daily choices. To see each other as full human beings rather than prescribed roles. To create private spaces of honesty amidst public performance. To build partnership where subjugation was expected. And perhaps that's the most you can ask of any marriage in any era. Not perfection, not freedom from all constraint, but the ongoing commitment to seek authenticity together, to create meaning within whatever framework society provides, to choose each other day after day as more than social constructs, but as the complex, full people you truly are. As sleep begins to claim you, your body relaxes completely into the comfort of your modern mattress. The stresses of the day fading away as you reflect on how different dating and relationships are today compared to Victorian times. In our modern world, we have the luxury of getting to know potential partners on our own terms. No chaperones, no rigid social scripts, no handkerchief signals or fan languages. We can text directly, meet for coffee alone, build genuine connections before making lifelong commitments. We can express our feelings openly, touch without gloves, speak without coded signals. We have the freedom to be ourselves from the beginning rather than performing prescribed roles and hoping to find authenticity later. We don't need private cottages or locked doors to carve out spaces for honesty. We can start with honesty and build from there. It's a freedom Ella Lenina and Henry could only dream of, one they created in small, brave moments despite every societal constraint. As you sink deeper into sleep, you might find yourself grateful for the choices available to you that weren't available to them. The opportunity to build relationships based on genuine connection rather than social advantage, to know your partner before committing your life to them, to enter marriage as equals rather than as owner and possession. And yet, there's something to admire in their quiet rebellion, in the way they found authenticity despite everything designed to prevent it, in their determination to see each other as real people beneath social masks, in their creation of private spaces for honesty amidst public performance, in their daily choice to build partnership where only hierarchy was expected. Perhaps that's a lesson worth carrying forward even in our world of greater freedom. The commitment to seek authenticity together, to create meaning within whatever constraints life presents, to choose each other day after day as the complex, full people we truly are. As you drift off completely, your breathing becomes deep and regular, your mind slowing to match the peaceful rhythm. The world of Victorian courtship, with its fans and handkerchiefs and chaperoned walks, feels increasingly distant, a strange dream from another time. But the essence of what Elenina and Henry built together, genuine connection founded on mutual respect and growing affection, remains timeless, as relevant to modern relationships as it was to theirs. May your own dreams be peaceful tonight, filled with the comfort of knowing that while dating customs may change across centuries, the human capacity for authentic connection remains constant, a bright thread woven through the fabric of history, connecting us to those who came before and those who will come after, all seeking the same fundamental thing: to be truly seen, truly known, truly loved for who we are.